Hey, good afternoon. This is Gene Long. I'm right here in North Richland Hills, Texas, and along with my producer and director, John Hensland, we're trying to keep this updated and keep this going, make it a little better, and hope you'll enjoy it a little bit. I want to welcome you to us. It's a pretty nice day here, and of course, it's Texas. John's from California, and so he can't stand the heat. And this morning it was about 50 degrees, and this afternoon it'll be about 80 or 90. Welcome to Texas. If you don't like the temperature, just wait, it'll change up or down. So, we've talked about a few things, and I promised to tell you some stuff. The hottest thing on the news is releasing the Trump files. And the files that Trump's releasing is the JFK assassination information. Now, if you think about it and give it some thought, what the government has is not, they just got what they got. And that's how they came up with the idea that there was one guy alone, and they never mentioned that Lee Harvey Oswald, whose AKA name was Alex James Hydell, you would just think they would know all that stuff. You know what I mean? So I've got an interesting thing for you to think about today as these files are released. One thing I'd like to do is introduce you to a Bible of sorts. This is Crossfire. Now, let me show you here. And I'm not advertising, but it's available, obviously, from Amazon.com. And it's written by Jim Marrs, M-A-R-R-S. Now, Crossfire is one of about 13 or 14 books that Jim Marrs wrote. My connection with Jim Marrs is high school. He was a cheerleader in high school, smart guy, and we were pretty good friends. And after he got out of high school, got him a little bit of education and everything, he became a professional newspaper man, investigator. And he just was totally enthralled by life and everything. And of course, in 1963, when the Kennedy assassination happened, I was in the service, and Kennedy had been killed, and we were on alert, and the base was closed. But if you were at the base, you were allowed to leave and go to lunch or something like that and come back. And my best friend, Bo Simpson, who would end up with 30 years in the service and retire Chief Master Sergeant, Jimmy L. Simpson, and Bo and I went to his little trailer right outside the front gate. And we went there for lunch. So we fixed ourselves some lunch, turned the TV on, and guess what? Jack Ruby stepped in and killed Lee Harvey Oswald. Another thing, too, you always hear Lee Harvey Oswald. Nobody ever knew that his name was Harvey until, in fact, I'm named after my Uncle Harvey. And no one ever knew that his name was Lee Harvey until the news media picked it up, and they weren't sure if he was Lee or Harvey Oswald, so they just put it Lee Harvey Oswald, and from that day forth, he became Lee Harvey Oswald. But everybody called him Lee. And so he was kind of a dreamer. He was a really smart guy, so don't sell him wrong. And he was about 6'9" inches tall, and probably about 150 to 175 pounds. So, I mean, this is no little wiry, skinny little guy. And they basically, when anybody talks about him, want you to think he's a little bit of a nincompoop, okay? So I want you to know he went in the United States Marines. Now, I don't know if you know anything about the Marines, but let me tell you, you can go any branch of the service and people will say, I was in the Air Force, I was in the Army, I was in whatever. But once a Marine, always a Marine. And Lee Harvey Oswald went in the Marines, and they give you tests. I mean, you hear people saying, well, I'm going to be a sniper, you know. It's not a joke They may know what skills they have, but you're tested all the time. And based on the testing, they're going to assign you work. And Lee Oswald, as a Marine, was assigned work in Japan in naval office work. How's that? And what was his job? His job was to help implement, follow, and have total knowledge of, because he had a top secret clearance, the U-2 flights over Russia. And so there begins our stories. And the big thing that most people don't pay attention to is his actual health documents from his service time. He caught some venereal disease and everything, and most people were given discharges and other things like that. But his particular reason for being continued service was he contracted venereal disease in the line of duty. That's pretty interesting, because at that particular moment in time, about 1958, in Tokyo and the Japan area, was one of the top KGB agents, and what they were doing was they would bring women over, and the women would hook up with the soldiers and try to get what they could. And that's the connection that got Lee going into intelligence work, all right? So we're going to cut away from there and give you something that you're not going to hear too much about. And that's an assassin, one of the assassins named Loy. And Loy was an interesting guy. He was an American Indian, lived in Oklahoma, and he had been in the service, been in jail, and he was at Sam Rayburn's funeral, and he met one of the assassination men, and his name's Mac Wallace. And you may hear that name from time to time. And so through Mac Wallace and other conversations, he was hired for a fee of $10,000, $5,000 up front and $5,000 after the deed, to evidently assassinate someone, according to him, or take a project on, let's call it that. And so as you follow his statements later in life, when he was really in bad shape and health not good, and his wife had died and everything was falling apart, he confessed that he was one of the assassins in the school book depository. But as he told his story, I found it very interesting that he always alluded to the fact that he did not have a 6.5 rifle, and that's the caliber of Lee Oswald's Concarneau. And he always said he had a 30-06, and he talked about who was there. Now, one thing I found was real interesting, when they had an early meeting prior to the assassination, this was well planned in advance. I mean, for, at least, it could be 7 or 8 months in advance of the assassination. A gentleman by the name of Bird, I believe, if my memory serves me correct, who's part of the mobster world and a friend of LBJ's, bought this building in downtown Dallas and immediately began construction. That's important to remember. You know what the name of the building would end up being, the school book depository. So as they had a meeting to confer about the timing and what they're going to do on what day and where they're going to meet and do everything, there were several people in the meeting. In the meeting was Mac Wallace. In the meeting was Loy, and Loy Factor, and that was his name. And also was in there was Lee Oswald, and also was a Latino girl, about 22 to 24, named Ruth Ann. And she was a communications specialist for the operation. And there's a possibility she could have been with the Cuban group, And she used walkie-talkies to communicate with everybody. But also, let me tell you a surprise who was there at the meeting. Jack Ruby. Now, you may not know this, but it took me a long time to dig it up, but Jack Ruby was really good friends with Lee Harvey Oswald. That's amazing, isn't it? Lee used to go over there and have dinner and drink and have a little fun, you know. And I have a personal connection. I'll talk about that one of these days because there's so much going on behind the scenes that Americans just don't know about. And think about the name Mike Payne and Ruth Payne. I'm not sure, but Ruth Payne, I think, is still alive out in California somewhere. And she continues to this day to say, I don't have anything to do with anything. And then if you look back at the old newspaper articles and everything, you'll find Ruth Payne's name. Ruth Payne and Mike Payne were the man and woman couple who Lee and Marina lived with. Now, Ruth was a teacher of Russian in Dallas. And Ruth and Mike had met Lee and Marina at a party where I guess the handling of Lee by the DeMortals was passed over to Mike Payne. Now, you say, Mike Payne. What did Mike Payne do? Mike Payne was an engineer for Bell Helicopter. And I think there's times where he was more than an engineer. And a good example of that is he just, for years, knew people, talked to people, and evidently had a handling of a lot of people. So you can have a little fun right now. Look up on your internet a Nazi general who was one of Hitler's favorites, first general he ever apologized publicly to. And he went to jail for 2 years and then got out and kind of disappeared. And you'll see a picture of him, and he became vice president of Bell Helicopter. And I find that interesting. There's just so much going on that we don't know about, you know. Well, anyway, going back, every time that Loy would talk about what he did and the meetings and all this stuff, when it came down to actually talking about the day, he went for the assassination. I have a document here. He said, and by the way, he was a Chickasaw Indian. And just before he died, he confessed to the murder of John F. Kennedy. He told Mike Collum and Glenn Sample, they wrote a book, that he was one of the 3 gunmen in the Texas School Book Depository. Lee Harvey Oswald, Malcolm Wallace, Ruth Ann, and a Hispanic woman also took part in the assassination. I thought it was interesting he said 3 when there were 4 of them. And Ruth Ann carried a walkie-talkie with which she communicated with other unknown individuals. The account was first published in the book The Men on the Sixth Floor in 1995. There you go. The authors explain Loy stammered through an unconvincing explanation of how he merely assisted the group, that the woman was a radio operator. Oswald and the men who hired Loy were the shooters, and that he had been nothing more than some sort of a backup. He reaffirmed the story of Sam Rayburn's funeral and his chance meeting with the stranger, the target practice incident, and his being picked up and driven to Dallas 2 days before the assassination. He told of the little house that served as the base of operations, the individuals at the house, including the appearance of Jack Ruby, Lee Oswald, and he stated that after the shots were fired, everyone but Oswald escaped out the back door of the book building, and he and the young woman leading the way. Now, here's something interesting, and I didn't know about this until just recently. They found, when they were looking for cartridges and everything, something on the roof of that building. And maybe to you, or to most people, it wouldn't mean much. And at the time, if I'd known about it at the time, it wouldn't have meant anything to me. That they found a fired 30-06 Sabot. That's French, thanks to John Henslin. It was actually designed, Sabot was designed by the Italians and titled and adopted by the French. And what does this mean? It means that you can take a cartridge, a cannon shell maybe, or a rifle shell, and you can put this sabot collar, which has 3 or 4 legs that pop out when it's fired, and run along the barrel, and take this smaller caliber bullet out, and very accurately with a major boost, because the sabot seals, and you're getting all the power pushing this lighter bullet out at extreme speeds and accuracy, and it flies out. Well, they found a 30-06 shell. We all know 6.5 Concarneau was what Lee used, and since they determined he was the only assassin, that's just somebody threw a shell up there. I submit to you this idea. When they met up there that day, they all met up there, and there they were, the 4 of them. And Lloyd took his walkie-talkie. That's why he kept talking about it. And his 30-06 and his shells. And he went and climbed up the ladder and went on up and went to the top. And there's where he was. Now, he may have fired more than once. I have no idea. Wouldn't be any witnesses or anything. But remember this. Sabot. So what does that mean? Let me explain to you. Imagine this, if you will, because if there are other organizations involved, they told Lee Harvey order a gun. He ordered 2 guns, by the way, and he ordered those guns under the name Alex James Hydell. That's never talked about too much because that would confuse the issue, and make people, who the hell's Alex James Hydell? So they always said it's a gun that Lee Harvey Oswald, even when he was captured and arrested, Lee Harvey Oswald had identification cards with him that identified him also as Alex James Hydell. Okay, don't forget that. And so anyway, I submit to you that there's a possibility that some organization took it upon themselves to make sure Lee got the gun he ordered. He ordered 2. He ordered a pistol, a Smith & Wesson 38 Special, and a 5-shot revolver. And you know what? I'm not sure if it was a 5 or 6. I don't remember now. I think it was a 6, yeah. And he ordered it, and it's trackable. It has a serial number, and it was a pretty famous gun. And you'll find out if you want to look, and you've got the time, that it was in a group of 80,000 that were sent to England in World War II, and 20,000 of those given to the British troops, and 60,000 were returned to America in the late 50s, and which ended up in California, and then they were sold in catalogs after the guns were cleaned and the cylinders were reamed. That's important at some future date. And then sold cheaply, and easy to get. Times were a little different then, Well, I submit to you that they were able to get a hold of this Concarneau, which is a okay rifle. Not super accurate, but okay. Now, you could improve the accuracy by some various means, but it's a mail-order gun. So I submit to you that the rifle was taken, and let's say 10 or 15 rounds fired into cotton or water, and those rounds would have come right through that rifle and been pristine. That word, pristine, welcome to it. You've heard it before, I'm sure, if you have an interest in JFK assassination. And so that would mean that if Loy went to the roof, and according to Lee's commentary with the police chief on his interview, and then later, and then witnesses, Lee was not in the room when the shooting occurred. I submit to you a possibility of that neither was Loy. He was on the roof. And when he came down and met with the others as they were leaving, and somebody said, "Let's get out of here. Oswald's down in the coke room," and he was. And they left, and they got out of there. And he went with Ruth Ann, by the way, whose car broke down, and he had to hitchhike the rest of the way home, but not until after he was paid his other $5,000. Well, imagine this. If Lee's, maybe his Concarno was there, they found it at some point, you know. Isn't it funny that a guy would actually commit an assassination and then hide the gun behind the box and everything? I found that kind of weird. And anyway, so you start doing some common sense thinking and wondering about it. And what if he did go down? He knew, you see, he had written letters as Alex James Heidel to the FBI and to the sheriff's office and to the police chief's offices, telling them that there was an assassination. So he sure didn't want to be in the room when it happened, so he left. Well, they made sure they left his rifle. And then wherever bullets came from, there's a good chance those bullets were his bullets, fired out of his rifle at some earlier date and put in sabots and fired from other weapons. Then on top of that, someone at the hospital slipped a pristine bullet on the gurney because, let's face it, this bullet, which now is a 6.5, a small bullet, pretty small, is flying at a tremendous speed, and it's going to hit a bone or something, just disintegrate. All right, and you'd never know where the bullets went. And there's a pristine bullet laying on the gurney. How about that? That's kind of interesting when you think about it, right? So that means that there's a possibility there could be a gun in the front, because there's several theories. There were two shooters in front. One was closer to the main building behind the fence, and then the other one was a guy who's, and this is a name you may not have heard before, and his recorded statements and everything's on YouTube. His name is James Files. And in fact, show you the world we live in today. You can contact James Files in Colorado Springs, send him $35, and he'll send you a picture of himself autographed with the statement at the bottom saying that he's one of the assassins that killed JFK. Whew, what a world we live in, isn't it? Now, all that stuff that I've just been telling you is probably not going to be in anything you're going to find. But if you really have an interest, and let me tell you, there's a couple hundred books written about the assassination. I've heard mobsters hiding in the gutters in the street shooting up at him. I've heard the Secret Service agent shooting him with a 5.56 in the car behind. And I don't know if you've heard this one. This is a pretty good one. There's some missing. There's about 20-something frames missing from the Zapruder film. And when you go back and see it, and I have seen the actual missing frames, most people haven't. And there's some unusual activity there. And their deal is, as you see them come from behind the sign out, and then they move the film back to the sign, see. So those are frames. You'll see Kennedy's face, and he put his hand here, and his face is real puffed up for some reason. And he holding himself right here. And then Jackie reaches over and touches his chest, and then that's when the whole side of his face blows up. Bloom. Well, their theory is that he had a device planted on his face and covered up with makeup that would explode and appear to be, and Jackie pulled the string to make it explode, and then she turned around and reached back and he fell in the floor, and she reached back on the deck and trying to get that little plate that was on the side of his face that had fell off, and he slipped under the seat and got in the back, and the other body was pulled out and taken on down to the hospital. Now, I think it's pretty clear, and if you want to do a little more follow-up, you know, the autopsy at the Dallas Parkland Hospital never matched the autopsy from Bethesda. And a lot of people throw it this way. Well, the people at Bethesda weren't used to doing autopsies. Then one thing we always need to keep remembering, this was a murder, and that's what it was. And it occurred in Dallas, Texas. So the authority of the investigation and all the evidence should have been right there for Dallas to investigate. Well, it didn't happen that way. And the body immediately was flown to Washington. And then, on top of that, all the evidence was collected and immediately went to the FBI. All right. I'm not making any comments about anybody, any agency. In fact, I'm just want you to know I'm just what I've learned and what I found out and what I've read. So you can pick your own story. In fact, if over my shoulder is the three assassins, and in front of me is the two assassins. Some of the other guys say there were two more assassins over my left shoulder on the other building. And then don't forget the one or two assassins in the gutter here along the street. I don't know how you shoot up and hit somebody down, but it could have been ricochet or something. I don't know. But anyway, there's so many different ideas. The one thing that's interesting is there were people everywhere on the sides of the road, and there were cameras everywhere. But when you get into the main area where it happened, look in the Zapruder film, there's hardly anybody out there, and there's hardly anybody over here. But if you look close over here at the guy sitting in the grass, and you ever get any stop action, look one of the guys sitting there on the grass, Jack Ruby. That's pretty cool. And so anyway, why don't you, if you get a chance and you're really interested, and you know, my friend Jim Mars sadly is gone. We used to meet for dinner the first Monday of every month, and my classmates, there were over 900 of us that graduated in 1962. We still meet. Now, I've had a couple of strokes, and I've got old here in the last year, so I haven't been to so many. And then about almost 5 years ago now, Jim died, and he was living in a really nice ranch. We had a big party at his ranch one time. And his wife, I think, has moved to Colorado, but I'm not sure that's where she is now. But I'm sure she still derives some benefits. And the book is still a current seller. And once in a while, you'll see Jim on TV, especially on Channel 13, where he's given a synopsis of the Kennedy assassination and what all. Well, a portion. Not what all he knows. Look at the size of this book. Now, if you're going to read this book, you know, it's just a little bit bigger than the Bible. You know what I'm saying? This is a big book. So get ready. But if you didn't know this, to kind of give the book a little bit of a boost, and that's the big word today, you know, for TV shows and everything, a boost. Let me give it a boost, and let me tell you why. The book, Crossfire, was turned into the movie JFK. Think about that, all right? And Garrison was on the track, and all those guys like, you know, all those CIA guys who claim they weren't CIAs, who never met Lee Oswald. There's a picture of three of those guys, Clay Shaw and David, and I can't remember the funny little guy with the toupee and never had any eyebrows and everything. As much younger men when Lee was 14, and one of the original members, they're all original members of the CAP, which is the Civil Air Patrol, founded by the General that Lee Oswald. Well, guess what? I guess we're getting a phone call from somebody. That's all right. Don't worry about it. They'll give up in a minute. And you know, today in this world, the one thing that all these scammers have figured out is they'll take your first 3 digits of your area code. Like if your area code is 614 or 940, they'll send you their fake message with your area code. And that way they think you're going to answer it and think it's one of your neighbors, you know. So I went somewhere else and bought me a phone in a different area code. That's why I have a different area code than the area code I live in. So it's kind of fun. I don't have to answer them. And then if you ever do call me and you're able to call me, I just say simply, this is Gene Long, and I'd like to talk to you. But if you're not, your name's not listed in my phone directory here, I will return your call after I listen to your message. How's that? And that's pretty simple. It's short message. So, and I want to tell you something else too, just a little personal observation. No one in my family had diabetes, seemed to have diabetes. And back in about 2007, my doctor asked about some of my habits and everything and said I appeared to have type 2 diabetes. So, gosh, I don't know. Do you smoke? No. Do you drink? Not anymore. Hadn't drank in years. Oh, well, you look like you're a candidate. So I went to classes and started going on a diet and everything and eat something no bigger than this and all kinds of stuff. And I started gaining weight. And I guess I was eating too much. And so over time, my other doctor said, forget all that. Go back, trim yourself up. You know, I'm a 6 foot tall guy, so right now I weigh about 235, which is not really in the healthiest. I need to drop another 10 pounds, and I'm trying. It's hard, though, you know, as you well know. And there's always some miracle cure, miracle diet coming about every 6 months on Facebook or something. You know, it's funny how they, Mega, I think that's what it's called. I love Facebook. It's great. But Mega, they're willing to tell you what you're saying wrong and doing wrong, but yet all the fake ads are in. You know, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It looks like it'd be pretty easy then to figure out what a fake ad is. But I guess when you come up and you got a dollar in your hand and you can give it to them, they'll take it. So anyway, I got diabetes, and by about 2015, I was taking some meds, and then I had to start pricking my finger every day and then giving myself a shot of insulin every day. And since 2015, I've been doing that, and here we are in 2025, so 10 years later. And I know you can get a doorknob for your arm, and I'm not disparaging it, but a doorknob, you know, and you can put it on there, and then it'll send a message to your deal. And just recently I see you can, I don't know how much it costs, but you can buy a deal, crimp your finger, just put it on your finger, and without punching a hole or anything, I think it gives you what your blood reading is, and you can immediately fix it, you know. But I punch my hole in my finger and get my blood. It's nice to see I still got blood running. And I'm 81 years old now, so, and I take my shots of insulin every morning and every evening and read my blood every day. And it's gotten a little higher, so I've increased the dosage some. And that's what you have to do. And just be thank your lucky stars when you get my age. There's so many, especially of my friends, John's friends too, who passed on and are sick all the time and dealing with it. And it's a reminder, and if you don't mind me telling you, don't smoke, don't drink. And John's got diabetes too now, don't you, John? Are you doing the shots and all that? Yep. He's shaking his head. And so, and let me tell you, John's claim to fame, it's pretty good, you know. It'll top everything I've got. John's daughter his youngest daughter became a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. What year?
'03.
'03? 2003. In the next 5 years, she was an extremely popular cheerleader. Lisa Henslin. Lots of videos, lots of pictures and everything. And as a result of that, being John's friend, I was able to go with him to many Dallas Cowboy games in the old stadium and sit on the front row right above the cheerleaders and talk to them and enjoy meeting them and go to their functions and everything. And nice girls, you know, really nice girls. And you know, the one thing they all had in common, and obviously still do today, even more so than ever before, they worked their butts off, literally, to be the best. And so I give them that, you know. And you may remember Suzette Russell. Suzette was always one of the most beautiful ones in the early days of Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. And she was from the Hurst area here. Hurst, Euless, Bedford, Fort Worth, Dallas. That's where I am, you know, North Richland Hills. It's more Fort Worth than anything. And so she had long red hair, and she was always in everything, and Love Boat and everything else. Well, today she's married, settled down, and whatever. We're Facebook friends, and that's kind of nice. And it carries through the ages. So I want you guys to have a good day. Hope you've enjoyed this segment, and maybe this is something you've learned, I hope. And hope you enjoy the videos we're putting up. There's a little bit about the toy run, and you know, when you're talking 50, 60,000 people on motorcycles, and one video there, you'll see Robert Patrick, and if that name doesn't ring a bell, he's a big star. Right now, he's in season 2. He was in season 1 too, of 1923 with Harrison Ford. He's one of the sheriffs there, and Robert's been in a lot of movies, but his real claim to fame, of course, is he was the T-1000 robot that chased Arnold in Terminator 2 and kept melting through and chasing him. And he's a good friend of mine, has a Harley dealership out there near L.A., and he's quite a guy, Robert Patrick. All right, well, you guys enjoy yourself, and this is Gene Long, and hey, good luck to you. I appreciate you listening to me, and hey, give them a shot. If you remember Dallas Cowboys, like Dallas Cowboys, let me tell you one of my claims to fame. I'm going to move over a little bit. I was a veteran, by the way, and so there's my veteran sign. But move that up and show them that picture of Nate Newton and me showing Nate Newton how to ride his brand new Harley Davidson. And I said, Nate, you know how to ride a Harley, don't you? And he said, I think I do. And he couldn't even start it. So I taught Nate Newton how to ride his Harley. He's quite a nice guy. Lost a lot of weight now, and he's back on the TV and doing things. So take care of yourself, and it's sure good to see you guys, and have a good time, and be thankful that America's going to be great again, okay?